police agency, we have a host of other partners that help us do good work. The list is here. We also have some new contributors, as we have our Outreach Fort Collins organization that actually just started this month, and they're just shy of maybe 30 days. But we're establishing a fast partnership with them, doing a lot of resources, and addressing some of the negative behaviors that we experience across the city. Here's the Outreach Fort Collins page. I'm not going to read this verbatim, and this is available for you if you request it. We can try to get you a snapshot of that. My sergeant's prepared.
This is on the Outreach Fort Collins website.
Perfect.
So if you go to outreachfortcollins, I think it's .org, and you can read all about what they're doing for us, what they're doing for our community. They're starting out as a small team, and they're going to be focused primarily in the downtown, Old Town area. So you might see them, you might come across them in your travels in downtown. They're helping us triage some of the non-criminal negative behaviors that you might experience. Us as police officers, we're limited on what we can do, how we can contact people, and how that contact flows and ends up. We're restricted because of the Constitution of the United States, which is great. The outreach team is a little more free to have direct contact with people. We have 3 ways that we can contact people. One of those is consensual. So if I come up and talk to you and you don't want to talk to me, and there's no other issues going around, you can walk away and say, see you later. And that's great. The other one is if I have probable cause, maybe something's going on that needs me to continue to investigate if there is a crime or not a crime. And I have the right to contact you at that point. And the other one, obviously, is if there's an obvious crime occurring in front of me that I'm watching, then I obviously can contact you and handle that appropriately. So the outreach team has a little bit more flexibility in how they can help people in certain circumstances that don't rise to those criminal contacts. And they can engage that community, that population, and try to get them to those resources, the other role players that we work with, to help long-term develop that good relationship with those people and try to solve those problems and get them into resources and hopefully stop that negative behavior that's causing concern for the community.
In just a few short weeks that the outreach team has been out on the street, we've had some tremendous success already. So I'm finding great value in that, and that is, you have a lot of contributors and a lot of people putting forth this effort. So I'm telling you right now, in just less than a month, we've seen some great strides there. Contacting the police department or contacting our 911 center or the police department for an emergency or a need, something that you feel the need to contact the police or first responders for, we'll break that down into a non-emergency and an emergency like a 911 call. In doing that, I might suggest that first that a 911 call is in a in-progress category, so something's happening right now. It might not be violent, it might not be dynamic, but something right now is occurring, and something right now is probably in the arena of somebody's their health, welfare, and their safety. So we just want to check on their condition. Somebody that you may witness routinely that would be, let's say, subjects passed out on a bench. We want to make sure that they're not in medical duress. And maybe you've seen that person passed out before or in a similar condition. But we want to make sure that they're not in medical duress, or that we can offer them aid, or we can make sure that they are okay and they don't have any exposure illnesses or anything. So we call those welfare checks, and they are emergencies, and we would respond in an emergency fashion with probably an officer and our emergency medical services. So in progress and sort of immediately dangerous to life and health. Non-emergencies are things where something, your bike was stolen, you showed up at your work, and the lock was cut off. They're more of a colder kind of a call, and we can work through that if you contact our office through a non-emergency. The bottom bullet, we do a lot of these workshops. The bottom section here is calling us directly. Some of you will get my desk number. Some of you will get my cell phone number, but if I answer my phone at my desk, I'm not out on the street doing police work.
If he's at his desk, then I'm going to get mad at him because he's not out doing his job out on the street.
So it's better to go through the 911 center or the non-emergency because it creates a statistic or a call for service, and we can keep track of the kinds, the number, and where and when we can direct resources. So it's very important to do that. as we develop a relationship here with this neighborhood and with this audience, we'll probably get to know each other more, and we can help each other out a little bit more. But that's what the bottom bullet means. I talked a lot about 911 and non-emergency stuff. First-hand information when you're calling on an emergency is the most important. And we have urgent cares and doctor's offices and emergency rooms in this community, and very often we will get an emergency radio call, or EMS will, over the radio, and it will say, I need an ambulance to go to urgent care. A doctor is calling for an ambulance. I think, not uncommon. It happens fairly routinely. And many times the physician will say, nurse, please call an ambulance. The nurse has no idea why, she's doing what she's told, so whenever she speaks with dispatch, there's a whole bunch of questions that need to be answered, and sometimes they don't get answered. They do their best, they get there, they render aid, they do their emergency. First-hand information, if the physician had the phone in their hand, we would get better information. So that's why it's more helpful. It's more helpful to us as police department when our 911 center gets a call. We would know it is a police emergency, or it's a medical emergency, or it's a fire emergency. So first-hand information is usually of greater value, and we can give you better service. Second-hand information we can work with, third-hand and so on, but again, first-hand information is the most important. We can respond better in that kind of environment. I talked a little bit about some of the in-progress types of incidents, auto crashes, welfare checks. Some people are disoriented and they're in medical duress. They have a diabetic event and other kinds of things, and so they may manifest something else, but you're like, I think I should call. And again, your outreach team is doing some of the stuff along in concert with the first responders. Your dispatch center will go through some interrogatories, some questions to get those details for you. So don't panic about what to say and all those kinds of things. They're going to walk you through those things. But the first question they will ask you is, what is the address of your emergency? So one of the most recent 911 calls that I responded to was a 911 emergency that originated in Greeley, and there was a young child who had some disabilities that had absconded. They had disappeared from school. And that kid had some special needs. The kid vanished. Mom's in Greeley, and she calls 911 on her cell phone. So as you expect, her call is answered by Weld County 911. They transfer it to the Fort Collins area because she says the address of my emergency is at the elementary school in Fort Collins. So that's where those dots get connected, the resources get on the way, and we go to the school, we locate the child, everything's fine, mom gets a calming phone call, and we're in good shape. But she knows the address of emergency even though she's in another jurisdiction, another community, in another state perhaps. So those are the things that are important, and I add the cell phone technology to that because it's not uncommon that you could use your cell phone to call 911, and that emergency signal is going to the center with the least amount of traffic, and that could be the sheriff's office. It could be Colorado State University Police Department. The yellow boxes that are in your parks at Epic, they're at Northside, they're at the Academy Prom, those are cell phones, and you pick up the receiver, push the button, and 9 out of 10 times I've done a test call, and that call goes to the Weld County Dispatch Center. So I tell them what I'm doing a test, I need to go to Fort Collins Dispatch, and they facilitate the transfer. And that's all I know about technology. Text messaging works too, and I haven't practiced that. Have you practiced it, Brad?
No, I never used it.
So there is a text 911, and I haven't done my own research on that, but it does work, and there was a recent story in the newspaper about that. Thank you for bringing that up, Brad.
Because they've been talking about it on the news.
Right.
So, question earlier about what happens to the people who are given citations. So there's a couple of things that could happen to the person. One of them is that they are given a court date, they're given a copy of the summons, and they're released from that particular location. Another situation that could arise, depending on the severity of the crime, they might be transported to the Larimer County Jail and booked in on those particular charges. Oftentimes, because of crowding considerations, the jail is not able to accommodate citizens that have violated more of the minor crimes, the lower ended violations, and so they're going to receive, most of the time, they're going to receive a citation with a court date, and they'll be released from the scene. So you might see us come up on a scene, handle the situation, and then everybody goes their own way. And sometimes we get called and say, hey, that officer didn't do anything. And we actually did do something, but there are some limitations, like I talked about earlier. There are limitations on what we can and can't do, based off of the environment, the circumstances at other locations. So,
some of our, the title of this stuff is community policing. We do our best work with your involvement and your feedback and your communicating with us. And so sometimes that involves some creative ideas and creative solutions. And one of those is the last item on the slide called location diversion. And so when a person is charged with a violation, the court will present to them a penalty. And I think most of us would agree that not all of the penalties should include fines or incarceration, because it's just not the way that we could do more creative and better kinds of police work. Many times violators are business folks, many times they're students, they're young people. I still do traffic tickets. So financial penalties hurt, point violations hurt, those kinds of things. But there is a creative way to dispose of those kinds of violations. And we call that location diversion. The prosecutor will present to the violator and say, look, you got into a fight at City Park. And because of that, I'm going to order you away from City Park for X amount of months, and that is part of your penalty. And usually the violator agrees to that as part of their penalty. If they were to renege on that and return to the park, then they have to kind of face the music again, and probably in front of that same judge, and offer up some sort of a reason why they violated that instruction. But that is a creative sentence to kind of a common or chronic solution, and we locate and divert violators from the origins of their crime, the business of their crime, the park, or the location, and that's been very helpful and very useful. And it's a creative disposition in lieu of sentences like fines and incarceration. Oh, and there is a whole bunch of that right there. It's basically kind of like a restraining order, but we call it location diversion. It's a little bit different kind of wording and some criteria. There's also some of the more traditional kinds of things like probation and community service. Municipal violations are very often the municipal court will sentence a violator to do useful public service. And sometimes that is working with the Parks Department to clean up the parks or clean up the downtown plaza and things like that. So that useful public service is often incorporated into that as a useful creative sentencing. And if you can write your question down, I'd be happy to answer that at the end.
I just have a question.
Yes.
I think this was supposed to be about the homeless situation.
This presentation is a community policing presentation.
It was represented as being about transient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't even touched on any of that.
Folks, real quick, I'm Mike Tromley, I'm the Deputy Chief for the Patrol Division at Police Services. When we talk about these, sometimes it's a very good idea to go through this and talk about what we're doing in a community. This is kind of the same presentation that we do, and we certainly are going to answer some questions, but I've found very much over the years, it helps to have a little bit of a common base of knowledge as we talk about things. It makes more sense as we answer. It makes more sense when you know what we can do, some of the things that we have done, some of the things that we can't do. And then we kind of detail this as we get more into the question and answer period. We certainly will move that direction. But this was requested as a workshop, again, for the residents of this area to talk about safety in the community, talk about things the police can do, residents can do, and this is a part of that. So we certainly are willing to get the questions, but that's what we're doing right now.
And I want to thank you for putting this presentation together, but my impression was that this was a gathering so that people within the Old Town community, that our residents could voice some of their concerns to you all. I wasn't aware that this was a presentation on safety, and I think that's why we have a lot of neighborhood people here tonight, because they want to ask some questions to you guys, or maybe tell you about some things that you may or may not be aware of, and how we might be able to fix these. So I guess I wasn't aware that this was going to be, I know we only have an hour, so right now we half an hour of slides, but when are the people who came here to speak when we get that opportunity?
Okay, well, folks,
We're almost finished with the presentation.
Okay, thanks.
So part of what we ask of our neighborhoods and communities is that they provide us good information. Like Officer Hopkins talked about earlier, is that in order for us to be successful with you in solving some of these problems, we need to have good witness information. You need to be able to provide us with detailed information about what you saw, what you heard, what you smelled, and you provide that to us in a very detailed format that we can better assist in solving some of these problems with you. So, included in part of being that witness is descriptions of what you saw, who you saw, what they looked like, clothes they were wearing, who they were with, vehicle information, bicycle, or were they on foot, things like that. So, describe in detail what you saw. How did that make you feel? That's important for us when we're trying to help solve these crimes and then present the case, if we need to the courts at a later date. How did this incident make you feel? So that's important for us. Some information about drugs. So, talking about a little bit of safety in your community. It's important to consider your own personal safety, the safety of your family and your friends. When you come across something that resembles a narcotic, an illegal narcotic, or drugs, or drug paraphernalia, I would encourage you to be very careful about just reaching out and grabbing it. We had another city employee just a couple of days ago pick up a bag of trash, and it actually had a bunch of dangerous chemicals in it, and that city employee went to the hospital. So it's important for your safety and the safety of your family members to talk about this type of stuff before it happens. If you have kids, you want to talk to them about what they should do when they come across something that is not familiar to them. Encourage them not to pick it up, have them come get you, and then you can decide the best way to handle that situation. Whether call the police department to come and collect it as evidence or properly dispose of it, or if you feel that you're safe and confident that you can take care of it safely, then that's appropriate also. Marijuana, it is legal, but there are some criminal activities that are associated with marijuana. They're very similar to the liquor laws, so if you consider open containers similar to marijuana, you cannot have marijuana open in public. You cannot consume marijuana in public. It has to be in a sealed container once they leave the dispensary, and it has to remain sealed until they're in a also have to be over 21 years old unless if you have a medical prescription for it.
So as we focus within the workshop, a lot of the theme again is safety, some of its negative behaviors, and a majority of it there's a blend of things that are either just negative behaviors or criminal. And so when we do a safety slide, this is about being vigilant, observant, just common sense kinds of things, putting together, even if it's the basic template of a plan. You've got a plan of some sorts, whether you're traveling within the community that you know, that you don't know, you're vacationing, you're going on an evening outing versus something out maybe in the early morning or whatever, but a basic plan of safety, and you just mentally reverse the things and the options that you would do if you experience some sort of crisis. So there's a short list of things that we would recommend that you consider to protect the safety of yourself and whoever you may be traveling with your families. This is a business slide. We also, the library is a great example. Some of the other businesses downtown, we will counsel them and talk with them and walk through safety plans, opening procedures, closing procedures, after dark procedures. As if we get into the winter months, it gets darker around 4:30, those kind of things. So there's a whole bunch of environmental conditions in the theme of safety, and as you're doing your commerce and whether you're a customer or you're actually a merchant or a proprietor of your business. This is part of your safety planning, whether you're traveling with your family or you're doing a business kind of a thing. That those are things that you should rehearse in your own mind, and you should probably do some sort of verbal drills or even physical drills with the people that are related. Sarge, if you talk about CIT a little bit.
Yeah, so just real quick, just some real basic classes that most of our officers attend. At one point or another, everybody will have gone through the crisis intervention training, which allows us an opportunity to go through scenario training to deal with people that are going through some type of a crisis. It could be a mental health crisis, it could be a substance abuse crisis, and it helps us to better understand the ways that we can communicate with them better to help de-escalate the situation. We also go through a variety of interviewing classes to help us talk and communicate better. So if you're talking to us, if you call us for something and you're not really understanding what we're asking, please continue to ask us questions so we can better understand what it is and how we can help you. And then we go through a lot of scenario trainings. So this is just put in here just to remind us all that times have changed. I've been in Fort Collins for almost 20 years now. I'm a CSU graduate. And things have significantly changed from the mid-'80s when I was here at going to CSU. And so we all need to adjust and accommodate those changes, be a little understanding, but we also need to be accountable and hold our neighbors and the people that are in our community accountable. So that's the end of our presentation. There's a couple of phone numbers and an email address if you want to jot those down. I will have business cards available for anybody who wants my business card. And so 33 minutes into the presentation, so we still have some time for questions. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, is anybody from the outreach team here, the new people?
Is anybody from the outreach team here?
Yep.
Yeah, there are a couple here.
Yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, if you're somebody to the program. And then will you be wearing uniforms and will you be having any kind of official?
Guardian angels.
Yep. My name is Lisa. This is Emily with Outreach Fort Collins. There's a third member and he is out of town right now. So we are officially on call Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 5. And like Kent and Todd said, kind of available to do that extra layer of support where there is somebody needs a little more support on the street doing outreach
whatever, as he's sitting there drinking a beer with a woman under a tree. Okay? Totally trashed already. So I called the police. I'm standing on my neighbor's back porch because we're gonna have a party, and I chased down the police officer through Eastside Park. I identify the guy, and he does get arrested. They come and take pictures of the evidence in the gutter, okay? That's another instance. We've had, just in a 4-house radius, they've tried to get in our houses. They knock on the door. They ask to sit on people's patios. And when my elderly neighbor gets her husband, he's already sitting down smoking a cigarette. That's intimidation, okay? A couple months ago, they try to get in, a guy drunk tries to get in a neighbor's house. She's hiding in her house, calling her husband, unfortunately, not you guys. He goes across the street, tries to get into another neighbor's house. One of the other neighbors finally sees him, calls the police because they think that he's heading to another neighbor's house. But instead he switches gears and he passes out behind their truck. They haul him off, okay? Saturday, I'm at a 60th birthday party across the street from my house. 10:30 at night, one of our neighbors is walking their dog at the Eastside Park. Luckily, there's 2 of them walking their dog, and they didn't have their phones with them. They come running up, call 911, Tina, and a woman has been raped. Okay? 3 of us go running over to the gazebo to make sure this woman is okay. She is laying there, throwing up. One of my neighbors is holding her head up, trying to talk to her, asking her name. Police get there, ambulance gets there, fire department gets there. We go on our merry way back to our houses. Did not see it in the newspaper because the victim obviously did not press charges. And the homeless guy that sexually assaulted this woman said to my neighbor, got off of her, put his shirt on, and said, I just fucked her over there. And every woman wants me, okay? And he runs off. So the cops are doing laps. Now, if I was a homeless woman, I probably would not report that either because I'm in a community, and communities, it's no knowledge that most people, if they know their assailant, they're not going to report them. I don't care if she had consensual sex over here with him. My neighbors heard her saying no. And they reported it. They gave their statements. And there is not enough control through that park. And not to mention the 11-year-old girl at daytime hours that was assaulted in that same park.
What park?
Eastside Park. 4 weeks ago.
Ma'am, can I address some of that real quick? I also want to be kind of respectful of other people want to talk.
Okay, that's fine, but I'm just giving a snapshot because
Yes,
we
ma'am.
need to include our community, our streets on your first slide.
Yes, ma'am, because this was specifically for the Old Town neighborhood. We are actually happy.
We are Old Town.
Okay, East Side is usually a little bit different as far as area. We're happy to come out and chat as well. I'm sorry that's not an intentional slight, but can I address a couple of things you brought up real quick? I listen to the crowd as we talk, and I hear as we talk about homeless woman was sexually assaulted, and we put the emphasis on homeless. I led our investigations division for years.
Yeah, she was
And-
homeless. I saw her right by my house the next day.
Ma'am, please. She absolutely was. Can I answer
Yeah,
this question?
she was. And
Can I please answer this
why
question?
wasn't it in the paper?
Well, ma'am, I have no control over that, but can I please answer your comment? Folks, I got a call about that call at 2:00 in the morning. We have an incident that's serious, that's a call to the deputy chief. I woke up, we talked about it, we did contact the suspect, and this is an open case, folks, so I have to be kind of careful what I discuss. We take this very seriously. We want to make sure, I don't really care if people are homeless or they live in an $8 million home. I handle those the same way. When that call comes in, I don't really care if the victim is homeless or not. I get that call at 2:00 in the morning because that's a serious crime. We had about 4 or 5 detectives out on that. It took a while to find the guy. We did find him. We did take evidence from him. We took DNA samples from him. We took her to the hospital. We interviewed her at the hospital. I'm sorry, I'm getting some of these. Can everybody hear me? I don't want to feel like I'm yelling at the people in the front here. And I'm hearing a lot of other outcomes of, I'm not comfortable with an impression that we are treating people differently when a crime is committed against someone because they're homeless. I take that pretty seriously.
I'm not saying that. I'm
Okay,
saying it's not in the paper, and, you know, my friend is sitting there holding her head out of the queue. One of the officers said, you put her head down. She said, no, I am not putting her head down in the queue.
Okay. Again, so that had the outcome, and we're still working through that case as we speak. I'm gonna go around the room, grab some other questions. We'll probably tag team some of these. And folks, we're gonna cut off the formal part of this at 7:30. We're gonna be around to answer questions. Certainly, if you have some of these specific circumstances, we're at a point where I would ask if you have some longer stories. Why don't we chat individually after? I think that would work well. Sir, I see your hand first, so please.
Thank you. Okay, I'm a 60-year resident of Fort Collins. I was born, raised here. I went to high school, junior high, grade school, went to service for my country, came back to Fort Collins, had 5 homes in Larimer County, was here in Loveland. I'm here with several of my vet friends, several people from the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless, and I'd be the first one to tell you that it's obviously a problem. We have a bad problem, but keep in mind, please keep an open mind, that not all homeless people are this way. You know, there's very many that are really trying to take and get out of this hole. So just try to keep that in mind and understand, you know, that there's always bad seeds everywhere in life, whether it's this state or another state.
And we're not talking about
Okay,
police.
you know, so I just asked y'all. Thank you very much.
As we talked today too, we are really addressing problem behaviors. There are a lot of things that people do that they may be homeless or they may have a home, and if people aren't breaking the law, we aren't getting involved most of the time. We are here to talk about problem behaviors that are occurring. Are some of those based on homeless individuals? Certainly they are, but there are also dots up on that thing that have nothing to do with homeless individuals and are drunk kids or have to do with the bar crowd. So I know that some of the focus is about homeless individuals, but please remember we see the whole picture as well, and this isn't just about homeless people. This, again, I want to remind you, this is about safety in your neighborhood problems you're seeing. But I think it's unfair if we characterize this as this is just about a homeless issue. Certainly.
Yeah, by the way, I live just across the street here, and I appreciate you guys when you come on calls that I've called, and everyone's been very professional. Thank you for doing it. Personally, I came here because I think the concern is not necessarily about enforcement, it's about how we prevent it from happening. I think what I see is, in the brief time I've been here, I see 3 kind of categories, right? There's many homeless who need help, assistance, some support to get their lives in order, right? There's that. There's also a lot of people with psychiatric or psychological issues who need mental health help, right? And then there's the final category of, we call them transients, vagrants, whatever, who are here and potentially are causing, I would say, a lot of the problem. I called in a stabbing last summer. I come out of my house and there's a guy with his stomach bleeding running towards me saying, I've been stabbed. So I called the police come over, and while I'm trying to plug his stomach with my t-shirt, I'm asking him, who stabbed you? And I got this garbled thing of, well, my girlfriend used to stab me and now this other guy stabbed me, and I'm like, where are you from, and so on. So it was obvious this person had not a connection with the community. And I think my concern is, what can I do to help people who need the help, get the help they need, and get the rest of them on a fast train out of town?
Human trafficking.
Civil Constitution. Listen up, folks. This is not, we're not doing a political rally here where we're clapping. Please, let's just hold our comments for now. I want to address a couple things. I'm a police officer. I am sworn to uphold the Constitution. That Constitution applies to everyone equally. Now, that means two different things. That means those of you that have an issue on private property, when we're talking about, I'll give examples that I know. Hey, I woke up and somebody is sleeping on my front porch. I don't want them here. There's somebody that is breaking into my garage. Those are things that are crimes. They're occurring on private property. We absolutely can address those. Absolutely. One of the other points that I'll make in a second gets to how we get to do that. But there's another piece of this that I am very sensitive to as a police officer, and I'll also be honest, I'm very caught in the middle. And I am sworn to defend the Constitution of the United States. And we can often say, how do we get, and this isn't about your comments or necessarily, but we say, how do we get these folks out of our community or something along those lines? Many times there are people that are not breaking the law and have every right to be, and you may not like hearing this, but they have rights to be in areas they're in. Our job often is to walk that middle ground between, is somebody doing something illegal, or are they perhaps doing something illegal, but there are some other contributing factors that we talked about, the mental health angle or something, and we get them to the right resource. Now we have a new tool, and part of that might be Outreach Fort Collins, and maybe you can help us with that. Sometimes it's an ambulance, sometimes it's there are other times where we can clear and put enforcement action and do it. So it falls into two categories for us as well. But I want to caution all of you, we need to be careful all the time about what we can't do, which is the legal stuff, and what we can't do. And what we can't do shouldn't become as an bad thing, that we need to find a solution. But I think that we're the solution, and what I can't do is as important to me as what I can do.
Yeah, my comment wasn't directed
No, I know,
at you.
sir.
My comment
I
was
brought it
really
up.
directed at more of the civil leadership, the elected leadership, to figure out what kind of procedures or policies can we talk about that might minimize the attractiveness of Fort Collins as a destination, right? And I'm just throwing that out, so please don't take it as I'm asking you to solve that problem. My comment is directed more towards the community and the elected leaders who make policy and laws and so on and so forth, and some of them are here.
Briefly, folks, also, when we talk about what we can and can't do, one of the questions I often ask people that I'm surprised by, I see email threads all the time, and I'll see one neighbor who's talked to another neighbor who's talked to another neighbor, who eventually, by the time it gets to me, I hear 5 or 6 people saying, this is going on in the neighborhood, why aren't we hearing about it? And I often ask the question, have you called the police yet? And we never took that step sometimes. Sometimes we do, and it's easy to address. But quite frequently, I always want to remind people, please call us. We should be one of the first points of contact if you have an issue, say, crime, something like that. So your hand was already up. If you don't mind, I'm going to wait and go to somebody else. Sir?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I spoke before about the focus of the meeting being way off topic, and I would like to say that there are real problems. Like I live right over here in the DMA Plaza, and we have people raising hell out there all the time, and it's been. I don't even bother trying to call the police anymore because historically they have not responded. And one incident I saw was obviously a homeless guy sitting on a bench, minding his own business, and the police showed up. I noticed it because the police car came in the middle of the day. You never see the police there. And eventually went over to that guy and talked to him, and the guy eventually got on a bus and left, and we never saw him again. He's been around town for a while. So my perception is that the police do in fact target homeless people and not people who are causing problems. Now, I have seen recently, there's a group of people that have been hanging out, being very disruptive, fighting in the streets, and yelling and screaming. And those people look like they're homeless or transient. And the police did come over and clear them out of our local bus stop. They're still around the area. But I'm saying what needs to happen is we need to draw a distinction between people who are causing problems and homeless people. And you're good about expressing that as an intention. The reality, I don't know. But just last Saturday, in the middle of the day, a bunch of college kids came up, walking through our parking lot in the middle of the day, yelling and screaming. I mean, it's a residential neighborhood. You don't go yelling and screaming as a residential neighborhood. They had their pickup truck parked on the far side of the parking lot, and they got out of the back of the pickup truck and continued yelling and screaming. They'd probably been drinking in the middle of the day. And that is the kind of behavior, people coming out of the bars, out of Tony's, and so forth. I'm just talking about what I see from my window. But the police really need to get with the program. Another thing is we want to call the police. How many people in this room remember that number? Not this one up here, but the one you call for 24 hours. That's not 911.
One thing I'd ask you folks.
Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is because that number is an obscure number that nobody is going to remember. Put a simple number on, like 498-3000 or 211 or whatever it might be. Something that people can remember to call the police, and don't put them on ignore when they call that number, which is what happens.
Okay, I'm going to cut you a little short so we can get to some other
What I'm
people,
saying
and I
is the
apologize.
police are completely out of touch with what's going on and are not making a serious effort to find out what the issues are and deal with them. I don't think they should be on foot. They should be cruising around in their cars. They should be walking all these areas.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off, sir, and not because I respect you, but we do want to honor other people's time. Folks, again, some of these are great things. You see a number of police uniforms out here. I count at least 6 of us. Please try to catch us after, and we can have some of these other discussions as well. Let me try to hit a couple of the other broad discussions. One thing I want to hit on again, just to reinforce though, we can't help you if you don't call us. I'm sorry, I'm seeing some people doing this, so I'll try to speak up again. I feel like I'm blasting the people up front. I can't help you if you don't call. Oftentimes we've given examples of people that do call. But often I find when I speak to groups like this that people are also hesitant to call. They either don't know how much time it's going to take. I sometimes have people that say, well, the police are busy, this is minor, I'm not going to bother them with it. You're paying me to deal with those things. You're paying us to come and deal with the situation, but I can't help you if I don't know about it. And we can talk some other point about, I mean, obviously, if it's not an immediate emergency, other things might take priority over that within the area. But I'm always surprised by, well, I didn't want to call because I didn't think you could help, or occasionally, Mr. Lindbergh, maybe not your exact example, but when people say I called and the police didn't come. We have computer-aided dispatch, and the calls get entered into a computer, and they don't disappear. Something has to happen to them. I can tell you, we always come. But we're going to call you on the phone. It may take a while, depending on what the call is and what the priority is, but we don't just forget about it and not show up. I saw a hand over here at one point, sir.
Is it legal to camp out on the public right-of-way in your vehicle?
Well, that's a loaded question because I never know what you think of as public right-of-way versus me. Camping is illegal in the city of Fort Collins.
In your car, so you can't park and.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Darren.
That's correct. That was one of the obstructing a passageway or a sidewalk. I just want to hit the Safeway corner for a moment because you brought it up, and I've had some good conversations with some of those neighbors. What we ended up with was a very delayed, and I'm sad to say that it was delayed. But it was a complicated process to address that particular corner because there was some really kind of complicated planning and zoning criteria that had to be addressed. So the police department was very aware of the Safeway corner, that Magnolia in Remington, as well as you that live there and work there, very aware, acutely aware, because you're calling us. But because of your communication to us, your attention to detail, as we brought up on the slides, and because of your persistence and your patience, quite honestly, with property management and some of the merchants and things, we invested quite a bit of energies into that, and there is going to be what we call an environmental design change there that's going to make that a little less hospitable to the negative behaviors. sometimes they're not as quick as we would like them to be, but this is one of them, and that is part of this discussion. It's because of you folks communicating that to your government.
Yeah, let's have our hand up for a while.
Yeah, I just want to make a point. I have tried to find this phone number in the phone book. It's impossible to find. I've had to call other police departments to get this phone number.
I will give you a business card that you can keep with you.
That's not the point, it needs to be in the phone book, where you can look it up.
I was gonna say, I do wanna address, you can always call 911, and you can say this is a non-emergency
No,
number,
but I don't call 911 type line. There might be another emergency.
And the dispatchers are trained to prioritize those, so if it graduates to a lower priority call, they will get you there.
It'd be so
And
nice if
there
you
are
find
people
it
that
in the
only
phone
have
book.
911 phones on their cell phones, and that's a fine way to communicate with us. That's fine.
911, they ask, first thing they say is, is it an emergency? You say no, they put you on ignore, end of story. That is the reality
So
on the ground of what
can
happens.
I make a suggestion? One, same thing I tell other groups, the non-emergency number is the non-emergency number. If it's truly so urgent, you can't find the phone number or have a time for it, that is a 911 call. Otherwise, at some point when you have it, we're happy to give you cards tonight, but that's probably a number that you want to sit down.
See, you're not listening to what people are saying. We need a phone number that we can find and call somebody answers it, period.
Okay, hold on. I have lived here for 12 years. I own a home in the park here. When I moved here, it was back when we all had phone books. I moved here, I looked up the non-emergency phone number in the phone book. I put it in my phone. These guys have responded every time I've ever called. I had a guy during a festival that had an emergency issue. I live right here. They have come to my door at 2 in the morning. When my car was hit, I was asleep. They woke me up to let me know my car was hit. I deal with this in my front yard all the time. And you guys are sitting here saying you can't find it in the phone book. I moved here and looked it in the phone book and put it in my phone. It's right there, Fort Collins Police. Right there.
So
it's there.
We've talked to, I feel like we got kind of a late start on questions. I think the library's okay with us kicking this a little longer. I also want to leave time for what I'll call a breakout in just a few minutes for us to be here to answer questions. But why don't we do a few more questions and let's hear what's on the first one. So you've had your hand up for a while. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to offer a parallel perspective. I also live in the neighborhood and have home here and live there. And I'm usually out and about in the neighborhood almost daily, multiple times, just transiting around as a pedestrian and a bicycle rider. And, you know, I see a lot of the homeless and transient issues and understand the scope of the issue from transiting through the neighborhood as I do. I just also wanted to remind everyone that for me personally, as I've described myself, I'm far greater threatened with my safety and well-being by the massive trafficking situation, which does vary. A lot of times, you know, the drivers are very, very polite. I think go to other towns and it's nothing like how polite it is here. But that can change in a minute, and it also changes consistently with the times of the day and when the bars are going, and or when other things are going on. And you know, with the promotion of drinking and all the drinking facilities and the manufacturing and drinking, and all the distractions and the texting and all this distraction all the time. We just had a gentleman my age within a year, yesterday morning, killed right over here. I don't know if I'm pointing to the east, just right nearby, killed nastily. A car ran over and just sat on the truck, you know. So, and those come in spurts. I don't know if it's more or less, but basically, again, I just want to say that, you know, it would be fine by me to see a greater police presence on some of these. Like, I finally saw him come over at Magnolia and Mason with those no left turn signs. It took a while, but I did see him come over and enforce that a little bit. And it's just, you know, real difficult. And then I made a comment, and my last comment is about 2 years ago, it was heard very well about how they really just convolute bicycle riding and bicycle riding events with drinking and drinking beer. Bicycle riders drinking beer. Well, bicycle riders just beer drinking drunks. And I take a great exception to that too.
Why don't we chat about that
And
after,
so
because
that
traffic
just-
is near and dear to my heart, okay?
Thanks for your time.
My question, the Flex Bus just opened up between here and Loveland Longmont Boulder. So I go to school at CU, so I do ride the bus, and I've seen plenty of people who, I mean, they haven't met burden of proof for being homeless, but they're urban backpackers, we'll call them that. But there's a lot of people who I believe are homeless moving between Fort Collins and Boulder. My question is, are we in contact currently with the Boulder Police to discuss how we might have a change in the population simply because of the bus that opened in January?
We actually met with Boulder Police Department, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of parallel, similar activities occurring between the two cities. Boulder and Fort Collins are great places, great communities to be in for everybody. And so you're going to see those populations riding the buses, going back and forth to both of those communities. So there has been discussion between the two cities and law enforcement agencies in particular. Public transportation is a whole nother animal that I'm not prepared to talk about in this particular setting at this time. So that could be something that can be addressed later on.
I'm just glad to hear that you're talking with Boulder.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Sir, can you break, please?
Okay, real quick. I think one thing, and this would hopefully go back to where this started at this evening. One thing I think we can all agree on here, we are a community, okay? Whether it's the east side, the west side, the north side, wherever. We are all residents of Fort Collins, Colorado. And if you are a responsible resident, we all owe it to watch each other's back. I would be the first one if I saw anyone here having an issue to come to your aid, but first I would call the police, because that's what their job is, okay? But we have to be hyper vigilant as far as watching out for your neighbor, watching out for yourself. It's not us against the homeless. It's not us against the transients. It's us as a community trying to find a way to take care of this and resolve this.
There's one gentleman back here in the brown shirt that has had his arm up and he's lost it down the house. Well, it's actually the guy in the brown shirt, sir.
My shoulder hurts too, though. Quickly, you mentioned there were some things that you can do legally within the confines of what's specified if a situation comes up, and there's a bunch of things that you can't do. What can we do as a community to help you tip those scales and give you more tools and resources to deal with the situation?
So, Deputy Chief Tromley had talked about it, and we talked about it. It's important that you contact us and you notify us when you see things that you feel is not appropriate, negative behaviors. I always tell my kids, things that make you go, that's not right. You know, give us a call. Let our dispatch determine the priority of that call. Let the officers come out and determine if there's something illegal that we can get involved in, or if it's something that we better deter that person or that activity to some of the resource partners that we work with. Summit Stone, the Murphy Center, the Mission, the Catholic Charities. So there's a lot of resources, but if we don't know, then we don't know. And so for you to be vigilant and provide us with that information, and it's not going to be a short-term fix. It's a long-term problem, and there's going to be a solution, but we all have to work together to get to that. I don't know if that answers your question.
I like your comment, and I wouldn't stop or direct all of your concerns, commentary, or solutions to the police department. Your city leaders are here too. You can communicate with them in email. You can communicate with them by phone. Offer your ideas. It's this stuff that gets positive solutions, that gets some traction on things, and it's negative behaviors. It's not one particular demographic. So I think I like the direction that you're thinking. So please communicate that with your city government, because they're the ones that dictate a bit of our policy and how we're doing things. They resource things in different areas, whether it's downtown or the south part of town. But the communication is key. And many times people get a letter maybe from I remember a former council person sent us basically a job, and I went out to the merchant and said, well, geez, how many times have you called us and what can I do? And they said, we've never called you. But this has been it's been an 8 or 9 month problem for them, and they just decided to offer this big email, but never once had called us. So that's a police thing, but please communicate with your city leaders and your government, your nonprofits, the contributors that we listed, our partners, and that's what community does.
Folks, here's what I'd like to do. We're over, but we're gonna be around for that answer questions. There's one gentleman that thought I was calling on him a second ago. I'm gonna take his question. I'd like to give you a couple quick comments, and then we're up here. The thing I'd like to tell you, it's clear to me there's a lot of concerns from this group, and this is a very engaged group that wants to know some things they can do, how we impact some problems. These are very effective when they're small groups as well. It's honestly quite hard to get through everyone's questions tonight and be able to answer them when I'm sitting here in a yelling voice and try to get all your questions answered. We are happy to do this. And if there's smaller groups, if there's groups of 15 or 20, we will come out and do these workshops and chat with people or just have a meeting to talk about issues. So really quick, sir, I know you thought you were getting called on the moment.
So I want to talk about from the business owner's perspective. I'm a business owner here in downtown. And I'm on the East Oak parking lot there. And the situation, just 3 or 4 weeks ago, when it was a little cooler, people were freely walking up and down the sidewalk right in front of my office. And it's a wonderful atmosphere. It's very festive. People are spending their money and making the city a great place to become if we want to go downtown. And just in the very last few weeks, we lost some statistics for July. It's become Woodstock out in front of them. I mean, I call you guys all the time, you know. And I think maybe what we might be able to do, or I don't want to continue calling you guys, otherwise we'll do that, because you always come, they always come. I have the number on a post-it on my front desk. But if you just decide which of the hot spots, because there are literally about 50 or 60 homeless vagrants that are yelling and screaming. Profanity all day long. And I have families of people, I'm a chiropractor, families come to me as a family. And it's gotten to the point now where people will walk obliquely across the parking lot and not walk down this, because there's that beautiful bench there that needs a nice prickly statue on it, so you wouldn't sit there all day and drink. And so, I'll continue to call you guys, but I think there are probably some hot spots at Safeway. That parking lot is not a hospitable place for families to shop. And so if you just do a walk by, when you guys are in the neighborhood, just do a walk by and go, hey guys, let's run along. And the woman here next to me was nice to say, there is really no place where they can go. There needs to be a hospital. There's a great bathroom there for them to use, which would be good for people who are coming to spend this. Oak Street Park.
Oak and Remington.
Oak and Remington.
It's hardly ever open now.
The bathroom?
Fort Collins Homeless Coalition, we monitor it.
But we need to put a big bathroom someplace else instead of that shit someplace else.
Yeah.
Not because I don't want them to be, they can be anywhere they want to be, but people don't feel safe to come in the evening and shop. To that point, I like the park. I don't know the park. And that's a hot spot. Maybe a little more walking.
You can go to Ms. McClure briefly, because she actually is the one that requested this meeting.
I'd like to ask.
Folks, we still have some questions going on, so if you just hold the voices down.
One of the things that we're seeing that's causing a lot of bad behavior is this uptrend of heroin in our community, and it's on our streets. There's a ton of people using it. There's needles all over the place. The Northern Colorado AIDS Project hands out clean needles, so at least these people are being clean about it. But I want to know what's happening with the narcotics division on cracking down on heroin, because as far as I'm concerned, it's not welcome.
Yeah, it's not. It's a hard drug, and heroin is one of the leading causes of death in our community, as far as from drugs. That's still a big question, though. Heroin is exploding nationwide. It's not limited to Fort Collins. It's not limited to anything we're seeing here. We can address that after the fact a lot, and do we go after dealers and that type of thing through our drug task force? Absolutely. But that is still a nationwide problem, and I don't know that aside from finding out what's happening by either getting reports from people or going to some of those calls or observing it, which people are savvy enough, usually they know when the police are coming, so we don't directly observe that as often. We follow up certainly and charge people once we contact them, but there's always a gap in between.
What about undercover in Old Town? Is there any undercover for us?
Folks, let me leave you with a couple of things, and then again, we're here for some questions. Two things I'm hearing tonight. Again, please remember the distinction between nuisance behaviors, unwanted behaviors, and unlawful behaviors. That's one of the first distinctions we need to make. We have an outreach Fort Collins team that I'm very excited to welcome on board as a partner, because part of what they do is fill some of that gap that we sometimes strain to fill, and they really work with the interests of everybody in mind. That's not to say that we don't, but we wear a number of hats and we have other responsibilities. So I'm very excited that the two ladies could join us tonight. I'm very excited to see that team come on board. Another thing I want to leave you with is please call us. I know you've heard me say that. I can't help you if you haven't called us. And we can't
call you if we can't take your phone.
We certainly, we want your phone call rather than finding out about something. The other thing I'll leave you with is please talk amongst yourselves as neighbors. This is, sometimes we go to neighborhoods with an organized HOA, sometimes we go to neighborhoods that are more loosely organized geographically like this group. But please, if you haven't, make sure you know some of your neighbors. Make sure you talk to each other. We hear the saying, you know, in the post 9/11 era of see something, say something. That's applicable to law enforcement as well. I mean, please tell somebody, whether it's a neighbor, hey, does this look strange to you? Call the police. If you're comfortable calling someone else, do that. But I'll leave you with that. I see Councilmember Martinez with an arm up. I'd like to recognize him real quick. And, sir. Yes, Ray.
I just want to say that this has been a good meeting. And we've heard a lot of your comments. I made a lot of notes on it on some of these issues that you're concerned about. But rest assured, council is not blind. Just we realize it's an ongoing thing. It's kind of a growing thing. And there are homeless people. There are people who are trying to distinguish that need help and care. But as we see this council, as we've said before many times, it is a community problem. So we are joining forces with the faith community as well to help out with shelters, to help out with food distribution. Salvation Army's been a big help, and organizations are too. So we're pulling these together, and the street outreach program is another. I'm hoping that they're going to be more than just on call. I think they're actually going to be out there. So don't think when they said that we're on call these hours, it doesn't mean they're just waiting for your call. We're actually putting things in process. So it'll take a little time. We've also just had a meeting in a work session last night about police numbers and what it takes to build up the police department, keep up with the growth, and how we manage that. So I think it's really important. Part of managing that is not just numbers of police officers, but it's environmental design, how we build the community, how we light it up, how we make sure things are safe in our community. We can build a beautiful city, but if you don't feel safe in it, we'll get it. So we realize that, and we're going to make it a high priority. Public safety is a very high priority for council. Trust me on that. And we'll address these issues, and that's why it's good to come to meetings. We want to hear those. And you bring up a good idea about the phone number. Let's talk to our marketing people, and let's see how we can make that work somehow. We'll work on it. It's not going to be just thrown out the window.
Thank you.
I want to thank you guys. You got that new deal now where you got this more officers patrolling Old Town. I've noticed it like it's keeping them transits in check more.
Well, we've added an entire daytime team that didn't fully exist before, and Sergeant Robinson leads that team. So that was I think a nod to something we wanted to do for a while, but we were able to do that. Folks, I'm going to do this. There are 6 officers in the room. We have members of Outreach Fort Collins. Ladies, could you stand up again so everybody knows what you look like? Back here, we have members of Social Sustainability in the room, which is another group that deals with this issue. We are going to be up here towards the front, and we're happy to answer other questions. Some of these are easier answered and maybe quickly answered. But please come up and chat with us. If there's somebody else you want to talk to. Chief Hutto, anything you'd like to close with?
No, I just, once again, thanks everybody for being here. This is obviously a really complex community issue. We didn't think we're going to solve it in an hour and a half, but we appreciate the dialogue. We know there's a lot more conversations.
kinds of things are not your only opportunity. Look for opportunities to have this conversation with city leaders, with police officers you encounter on the street, with state leaders, because this isn't just a local problem. These are issues that impact our entire state and, in fact, communities all over the country. So look for opportunities to stay engaged. Understand that your police departments out there are doing, in my humble opinion, a very good job of keeping the community safe. We're not going to be everywhere all the time, but we strive to be where we need to be. So once again, I really appreciate the opportunity and thanks for being here.
Well, I've never officially been chair. So, yes, I think one of the things that I'm going to discuss that needs to be addressed is the hate crime that is homelessness and how it is actually permeated the police force. And while you guys may not think that, I wanted to give you a couple of examples so that you can actually start. Right now, we're just busy putting together the complaint that has all the other lawsuits we're already that we're honestly already 2 weeks in order, so we haven't gotten to this complaint yet. But we're going to trial. And so, because basically the first step
really quick as you're telling me, there's a lot of people that want to talk to me and listen for a couple minutes.
Yeah, this is very
I am going to give you a card, so go exactly.
So it's this easy. What you'll notice is that most people that don't do the due process on its face, they say save that for court because we can't risk trusting you or that you might think you're going to be lying or racketeering to get this contract. But they don't do the first step, and they lie when you catch them not knowing the job. So 3 cases, for example. But the maps showed us to be outside we offered maps when they stopped us. They said, save that for court. We already have maps back in the patrol vehicle. We went to court, we won. They lied about the location. They throw a lot of cameras, and then the jury didn't buy it. So that's a municipal court records. It's a court curfew eviction or court curfew neighborhood. They basically lied about maps and giving us false arguments and a probable cause situation. They said they used maps, they didn't use maps.
Didn't you talk to Lieutenant Kinsman about this the other day?
I haven't had a chance to look into it. Okay, so
you've got about a minute left.
Yeah, these are the 2 big ones. Okay. Officer Giddings used a map that he referred to from the Parks Department to kidnap or illegally ticket us off the sidewalk across the street from the mission that is the Linden Street sidewalk. He used this map from the Parks Department that has since been rescinded, and I talked to the Parks Department and I found out that why it's rescinded, they don't use it. It's just
did this go to court, folks?
That one went to court and we lost.
I'm not asking that, but did this get argued in court?
This one did, and I lost it because as a county charge, not a minute. But still, I'm being convicted and possibly banned from that sidewalk for a year. So that's still pretty bad. Big one is going to walk over right now, which is what I really think is so much better. This is imperative. That bench area for the side of safety, when the fence went up earlier this year, I called the
you guys know I will never talk about a case that's going to trial. I can't.
Well, I can tell you this. I was charged with trespassing being inside of this camp safety property because they're considering that bench area as safety property. They've taken it to trial. The DA is basically trying to get away from it.
Yeah, we caught Safeway security guards taking this.
And I'm never going to no, it's not comments. There's an email train of Rob Mosby, an email that we gave them saying that it was a right of way and it was an approached right of way. It was illegally put up. And the email is in evidence and it's mentioned in the reports.
I got other folks waiting to check it.
So, I'm just saying this. It is a theft of federal land that if you guys don't drop that, you're going to be signed. So does that not sound pretty fun?
I'm not going to argue about an open case, but what I am going to do is give you a card. That's our comment line. You can call that.
Well, everywhere we can take it in for current cases and past cases have been places where other people have taken it for years. And the officer said that to us when we got taken in and won those trials. So you can go investigate now all the other places that we've won that people have been taking it for years. They need to stop taking it over there.
hundreds of things.
Guys, I'm gonna move on to some other questions.
Thousands.
But I appreciate your time, I appreciate your input, okay?
I'm telling you, it's not trespassing. It's very basic.
He's going down. Is that a charge of racketeer?
Yeah.
For not taking. Wait, they literally just said that they'll take your 911 call, and he did just take your 911 call. It's not a garbage place. It's a common sense. Common sense.
I just we started a charge investigation.
Whatever his name is. City council.
I think we were there when I had time to parking spot or your business or your entry, then I can say, hey, that's not okay. Does that make sense? Those are the things that I'm bound by the Constitution, federally and the state and the local system.
So the gentleman over here identified, categorized three different.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of
It's far more complicated than that, yeah.
But I think it just gives a general sense. So there are repeat offenders. Is there anything that you guys do?
And I do that with that location diversion. I explained to the judge, I said, we have a chronic violator at this location. What are we willing to do creative-wise to keep them from that location? And, prosecutors and our judges to do this. We can say that the rock is option. It doesn't matter. Maybe there is a combination of fines, incarceration, public service, and the prohibition from that area. So we have those conversations.
Actually, you're too.
William, what can I haven't seen you in months. How are you?
Could be better. Speaking on public versus private, so you guys are talking about the bench area.
Yeah.
So is that in the right of way?
It's called a public right-of-way because of the project, yeah.
Okay,
but it's considered private property. It's in control of the property owner. So
if someone has to be there 24 hours a day within that 100 feet, which is in the right of way.
Well, you're talking about control of the property.
No, I'm talking about if you can get a trespassing charge on
it's private property.
The bench area is private property.
That's private property?
Yeah.
Really?
And how do you know this?
That's private property.
And how do you know this?
Wow.
Through the planning department.
And the planning department is city.
So here's an example. So that bench and the fixtures around the Safeway.
Okay.
Are controlled and maintained by the property manager. It's not Safeway, but it's a property management company. And they do all of the fixtures, the mowing, the irrigation, and all that stuff. It's not controlled and maintained by the government, and that's the distinction. So public right-of-ways, there's this overlapping area on a right-of-way, which means there's a land-use code. It's not unlike what we experienced with Jefferson Park, where that belongs to the railroad, and there's a restriction to its usage that is controlled by the government, but it's privately controlled. So with the railroad areas and those easements, if you sell that and they sold Jefferson Park, they can say, yeah, we're going to sell it to you, but there's only certain things that you can do here. There's things that you can't. Right, it says there's certain stuff you can't, and that's very similar. And I'm not gonna blow smoke up you and say that I understand that completely, because that's a lot of civil law and land use code stuff, and I am a criminal law person.
But that bench area there, that's actual land that is itself private property.
Yes.
That's private.
Where's that?
Because it's
saying it's private.
You'll have to get that through planning. Here's an example. Your jail and your White House and your government buildings are public property because they are government property, right? But you don't have the freedoms to zip in and out of the White House any place that you want to, and you don't have the privilege to do that in a jail or a prison, right? Because it is a public building controlled by the government. Right. But this is a district. It's a little bit different. This is a quasi-government thing because it's a district and it has funding through taxes. So there's complicated layers to that, and I'm going to just completely admit to you that my bailiwick and my profession is criminal law. And
when I try to reach out into the civil law and land use code and insurance law and other things, I don't know that stuff.
Well, isn't a police officer supposed to be knowledgeable of all governing law?
We can do our best,
including
criminal
right-of-way
law.
law.
And that's why your sheriff does civil processes, is because they do the civil angle, and we don't do civil processes.
Okay, so when it comes to public versus private land, how do you determine what's public and private? And is there because I've come across...
It's probably through an evolution of history. You guys have experienced that with some of the delineations in some of your court cases that you've won and lost on the natural areas and the Jefferson Park area.
So do you use Larimer.org/LIL, their land information locator, their GIS program in the county?
We would probably use like the city one, because the city has a GIS, which I know David uses. David's used that in court, and I don't know if we were together in the same courtroom with a win or a loss, but you presented that on one of your natural area cases, and I think you
was the protest curfew. Yes,
and that was one of them, and then there was another camping one, a ranger case, and I think you won that one too.
Instruction. Yes, that was
right.
also
Which, by the way, is big. Well, there's. I'm not saying all of that stuff is all really nice and tidy.
So what I'm trying to get to is the actual Safeway horseshoe bench area. Is the property line in front of that bench area then?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would tell you that, let's say the sidewalk is here and the horseshoe is here. If I were just walking up to it, I might just, in good faith, assume that everything west of the sidewalk is in control of Safeway. However, I also go to the east side of the sidewalk and I see irrigation. I see their irrigation, their sprinklers feeding those trees, and I know that's not public and government water feeding those trees. I know it's probably the landscapers doing that. And then I ask myself, is the sidewalk? I know the sidewalk is public property, but this piece here, those are complicated matters. It is in control of the Safeway property manager. The people that are taking care of that entire plaza, it is in control of them. So when things get repaired,
what about
they're in bad shape.
They had to put it up for a vote.
In this case,
which one?
When the whole fence went up, they put it up for a vote. So if it's their property, why would they?
No, they didn't put it up for a vote. I think one of the offices said you can't put the fence up. They said, well, we're working on a project. Well, you got to put the fence down. So they negotiated. They dropped it down. Yeah. So they removed the fence, and then they're working with redoing it.
Was that fence put up without authorization then?
Well, they had the right to do that because it was their property and they're in control of it. But being that it was in a right-of-way, it was a land use kind of conflict.
So it was 2384.
I don't know what it is.
Okay. Well, here's what needs to happen. Okay, are you ready for this? Okay. You really need to listen to this, and you guys need to as well.
Are you giving me both barrels right now?
I'm giving you both barrels.
All right.
This is what you need to understand. County has plats that the city gives out to delineate where land is.
Okay.
Always, never an issue. It's always plats. Then the housing or developments come through. They have plats of their own to show what they buy and it's sold out to them. The Safeway, according to all the plats and everything, has their parcel of land. That's the Safeway, and that property line follows the big wall, the really tall wall. And it goes. That's it. Basically, if you do an actual count of 100-foot right of way, it goes from that wall all the way to the brick fence of the opposite side of the street. You can tell exactly where they platted it.
Right, the 50-foot roadway.
That's on every map that we found saying it's 100 foot.
Yeah. So you guys have done more research and have more knowledge about that than I do. Yeah. Because I'm not a land use attorney or a zoning guy.
But wouldn't jurisdiction be your very first place you start your job when you show up?
Exactly. Yeah, to a point.
And that's determined off
What is your goal here? Establishing.
Okay, here's the goal. Here's what's happening: is that fence may not be legal without prior authorization or notice.
We had an email from the city stating that it was a violation.
And so
the land use violation.
Yeah, exactly. It was, and then the actual law itself states that once it's put up, every day that it's put up, it's naturally illegal. So it is never once illegal without a permit. It's only after 10 days, that a notice is given, that they can take it down themselves as a city and bill you. but you have to take it down within the first 10 days.
You're talking about more than I know on that matter.
Okay, so here's where it gets sticky. This is what I'm trying to resolve here, is that we're in a homeless discrimination lawsuit against Officer Chernak, Howard, and Ray, because I jumped that fence in front of them at night, and I immediately told them what I was doing. My name, I'm jumping this fence. This is a right-of-way encroachment. The reason I know this is because I'm the only one who triggered the takedown notice to get sent. Here's a copy of it, and that you can follow it up. Of course, I didn't think to notarize.
When the fence went up, it was such an obvious hate crime. We went straight to the city, reported it, and that's what triggered the takedown.
Yeah.
Oh, so you went to planning or something?
I went and I talked to Rob Mosby myself, Chief Construction Inspector. He gets the takedown notice sent. I grab a copy of this takedown notice and I provide to them. They start with forged. They start with formatting's not right. They eventually said I was too loud for them to read it, and then eventually they needed to be notarized.
Oh, your complaint?
No. The email that I provided to them while I was still inside the fence.
Okay.
So now they have knowledge that it's a city code violation. Per city code needs to be removed. It said per city code on the actual email. That is an encroachment of 10 days.
But I'll tell you that city code violations can occur on private property.
Well, here's the thing though.
Right.
It said, the email said that you are encroaching the public right of way. You have 10 days.
Right.
So it was clear there's no issue of trespassing or private property.
So that's the city acknowledging that it's not safe.
Yeah.
That it's right away.
That it's even right of way, not even city. And this email ended up in the police report, never mentioned in the warrantless arrest affidavit. So now we're going to trial because the DA decided to take the charges, but the DA has access to
So are you going to county court or muni court?
This is district court.
Okay. So this would be this is a fine platform for that. So as you know, because you had charges before, it doesn't mean that I charge you and that you're guilty. It means that you have been charged and then you have that arena, that courtroom
which
arena.
is, in order to be charged in the first place, you wouldn't have to have probable cause.
Right. And in good faith, I might have done the same thing.
But here's the thing. How can you have probable cause when I have an email stating the exact opposite of what your suspicion is?
Not all of that gets examined right on the scene. That's trying a case on the street.
Then in that case, why were charges picked up by the DA the next day after they had a chance to go
Well,
talk to Rob?
you have your opportunity in court. This happens.
True.
This is an argument that happens a lot. They're
True.
like, well, you couldn't have done that because I have the evidence
Okay.
here. The evidence is presented in a courtroom, not on the street.
But the evidence is being presented to a cop that should have done his job in the first place.
And it needs to be examined in the courtroom. And that's only probable cause of arrest.
Then in this case, then, if I get convicted, is it legal for me to be convicted in a sidewalk that is now trespassing? What am I being convicted of? Trespassing. And what are you guys using to show that it's trespassing in the first place?
Well, William, I don't know your case very well.
Well,
so
there you go.
I can't
That's
have
the
that
whole case.
conversation.
That's the whole case.
He's not trespassing.
I'm not trespassing.
So you have a fine case to take to trial.
Well,
But the point is if I lose, like I lost the one in the park curfew for the protest because of evidence or reputation, you guys always put on reputation. I can't be wrong. 25 years I've been on force. I am now convicted.
Is that me?
No, it's Giddings. Pure Giddings.
Basically.
But real quick, help me out with this one then. I am convicted of this other one, of being in a park, which I was not in a park. Everyone knows I'm in a sidewalk. And now I'm considering the sentence is that I may be banned. Am I banned from that sidewalk for a year?
Well, that's your contract.
Well, if I show up on that sidewalk and I call up, is it not illegal for you guys to take that call, or is it illegal for you not to take that call? You're racketeering as a city, and you're not taking care of your own legal problems. And now I get lawyers. I get lawyered up whenever I say things like this, like, "Oh, it's too legal of a situation." I got charged with trespassing, and I'm asking you guys to take my 911 call
It's the
on any level.
equivalent of walking down the street with a root beer bottle without the label on. Top says open container. You try to explain that it's root beer. He says save it for Ford.
Is that really good safety?
Technically, that's not enough.
Well,
but that's essentially the
well, guess
emotion
what?
of
We
the
had an
scenario.
actual
I
situation.
can't fairly address this conversation not knowing all the facts. I just can't do it.
Well,
I can't fairly continue. I think that you have a valid case or trial. I do.
Okay, then
and that's what that's for.
Then,
and you know what? I've won as many and lost as many as you have.
I'm still kind of, I'm hearing your argument. So what do you advocate?
He's basically has a trespassing ticket at that bench area, which is actually right away. It's not safety property. There is a.
I will tell you that there is a public right of way that it is privately controlled.
Well, they have the right around there.
But we already know that it
amendment
wasn't
process.
legally privately controlled because the notice said that it was never put up.
Well,
they had to ask this. I guess what we're trying to say is
the
a
city
sidewalk.
looks at it and examined it and says that's not what we want. And everybody involved in the fence that was there temporarily knew it was temporary.
Actually,
and they knew they wanted to do something different with it.
Actually,
it just got delayed.
I have the entire email train, and it said, "Why'd you put it up? Oh, it's a temporary safety precaution.
Right.
Hey, sorry, that's not going to fly."
Right.
And then they tried to put up, "Oh, hey, we have this amendment just about to be pushed through." Right. Eventually, they said, "Sorry, that can't fly."
And I saw that a bit of that email train too. So I can't fairly go on into your trust.
Maybe to answer your question.
Against a homeless person is basically
yeah, but this
sidewalk ticket. What's that?
It's essentially what
that's what I already got.
But a sidewalk is a passageway. So if you obstruct the passageway, then that's a crime.
Well, no, I got a ticket
for
being
on a sidewalk. We call it a sidewalk ticket because it's a Terry stop, and we were stopped because we're homeless and they didn't believe us. And they threw us.
Well, there was reasonable suspicion because there was a fence. There was reasonable suspicion of a crime going on. So,
actually, you know what? In Denver, I got charged, and I was just standing on a street corner.
It's fun. It's fun rapping with you guys, but I get down that little rabbit hole thing, and I don't know your case.
Well,
and I know Terry better than you do, and
let's finish with this thing.
We're amicable. We're not going to fight about it.
This is what I'm really
okay.
A case that's already been won by us. We used a map that showed that we were outside the city limits.
Sure enough.
The officers that showed up started ticketing us. We said, "Hey, we're not in your park. We have maps." They said, "Save that for court." We said, "You guys have maps?" "Yes, we have maps back in the vehicle."
Right.
We don't need to get them right now. We go to court. The officer lies about where we are in the park. He lies against the body cam footage. We're doing a good enough job. We tell the jury that you can't be doing this stuff. They lose, but because it's only two parties, and it's like me in a park and you catching me in a park. If you're not catching me in a park, that means if I win, you lose because you didn't use a map, and that was your freebie. So if you're not using maps, then you don't have probable cause. You're just hoping that you find them. And I won that case. And so the question is that cop liable for kidnapping, false imprisonment, and why is he still working? And why are you guys not caring about cops that are wasting your tax dollars because they wasted your jury and your judge's time because they lied and they were caught.
You're drifting a bit.
So that's the goal. Are these people going to be held accountable or not?
Let me ask this question. And I'm just sure. You guys both seem like you're fairly well educated.
We try to. We've been screwed over a lot.
Yes. You're very intelligent. Why pursue this avenue of...
I got the perfect answer for you.
It seems like it's counterproductive.
I know the exact answer.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is the best answer that we've given because that's the exact question we've gotten. And this is something that you need to understand, everyone, when it comes to the homeless population, is that we were born here, wronged by our family to begin with. So Mormons, they excommunicated. The Mormons, our family's Mormon, so we got excommunicated, and that's where the defamation started. That's where the crime started. I also had a developmental disability of kleptomania that was left unaddressed. And so when I stole from my parents, they didn't teach me; they prayed over it instead. And I ended up getting the real 18 and a half triple felon. So I'm trying to figure out. I basically plead guilty to everything. Just a good boy trying to learn. I plead guilty to crimes I don't even do. It take a couple of years for me to realize the wrongful conviction of both the developmental disability. My parents basically got away with everything, and I got rap. And then basically, I'm trying to tell my brother about it. He's my only witness, and him and I enter into a defamation trap of work environments not believing us, doctors not believing us, parents thinking that we're crazy or bipolar and still thinking us. Our extended family doesn't believe us, and eventually he gets hurt of the job, and then we eventually end up in a basement where we get sued by the city for breaking our criminal labor rule, and it's all coming down to discrimination.
We were struggling to make ends meet in Hopkins, and then we got picked up by the city 15 times
for all the
areas that
sleeping
were out of
tickets,
areas, out of jurisdiction, vagueness of law, and they essentially kept us homeless by targeting us, and we're trying to tell them, hey, we're working with you guys. We're not actually.
Yeah, so we've been trying to get help since day one. We would love to go to college someday. We would love to get out of the system.
Your immediate family is extended family.
All Mormon, all at the same time.
We left the Mormon religion, and they consider that very heinous in their religion. Like, it's technically a violation of freedom of religion. Some Mormon families actually get after other Mormon families for abusing their kids for leaving the religion. Basically, that means they're teenagers. They legally cut us off. They haven't crossed the assaulting their job.
I tried to explain my consequences, and they just didn't believe me. Like I was trying to get out of it. Because it looks like I'm trying to blame them for it, but I'm not. I'm just trying to learn from my mistakes. But I'm also trying to hold everyone else accountable too.
I guess what he's trying to answer your question is we caught these people committing crimes, and all we want to do is turn them around, just like any citizen would, because it's atrocious to let an actual statutory kidnapping go. A cop who didn't have probable cause, or a ranger without probable cause, or 50 other incidences of homeless crime related issues of people throwing firecrackers at us.
I stand up for your rights, the both of you. And I take your rights very seriously, just as I would take anybody else's rights very seriously. And that's what I work hard to do every single day. And there's things that I do that you don't like, and there's things that the outcomes are not, a win-win for either side. But I take your rights and your freedoms and your civil liberties very seriously. And I know that you've had negative experiences with my teammates, and I know you have beefs with certain names and certain court cases and things, but I take that very seriously. And that's my commitment to the both of you, whether you believe it or not.
Were you part of Occupy Jefferson protests? Were you
Probably
ever there
not.
ticketing Zach or any of
Probably
that?
not if it was at night. A lot of that was at nighttime, but I was there during the day.
I haven't had many interactions with you, but it's funny. Every time we tell a cop about this, they put on a face about it and say, help, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's weird how we get the middle finger on the other side, and something so simple of, I called 911 on the guy that was tearing up the roof across the street. There was a Colorado article about it.
Yeah, the one that was hurt in the roof and the bleeding and everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
I called that in 6 hours earlier, and Officer Manuel didn't take my 911 call. He said he was going to get into it, and there was more than enough officers there for that night. And it was less than 100 feet away that he put us on a ripped up roof piece or closing the alley. And they actually don't take it. And then I find out later in the morning that the crews show up, and then I go file an internal complaint. I actually talked to Schroeder, the internal complaint guy, a couple days ago after a city council meeting, and he said, oh yeah, they checked there, they didn't find anything. And it's like, I lost all trust in guys.
Why didn't they
like,
check with him?
Why didn't they come back to me?
But I can't answer that.
Yeah.
I'm just
but you
telling
should
you,
go look at that because you are a cop.
I'm
'cause that
telling
is
you
a
what my
crime.
commitment is, and,
Yeah.
and it's the same commitment that everybody else gets. So I can't answer what was going through other officers' minds and how they did things and everything. I can't.
I guess what it is
Do you have
as
a
cops,
commitment
it's
to
sacrilege.
investigating fraud in your own department?
Will you
That
arrest?
isn't my task, no. So we have a division for that, and I don't do that job. But we have a process for it, sure.
Oh, okay. Well,
So if you
until I
can-
can get the paperwork out, could you please report 2 cases, one hour policy?
If it's an internal thing, it has to go through professional standards. I can't do that. I can't work those
You
cases.
can't even mention it?
No. And they're given to a sergeant or above, and I'm not a sergeant.
I mean, I'll go through the channels.
Because they're
It's just
specially
that,
trained for that. Because they're talking about personnel, labor law, all those things, and they have to go through that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for attending.
Well,
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much. So I'm reaffirming my commitment, boys.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you a final question.
Okay.
Rhetorically speaking.
All right.
Fence goes up.
Okay.
And it goes up illegally. And the guy jumps in and he provides an email that says it went up illegally. Would you charge him a trespass?
I may.
And what would be the
Because
what
in
are the
good
elements of trespass?
The offense that is designed to exclude intruders.
Okay.
And that's in the statute.
And that the person, because the person, every ticket is about person, not offense, right? So the element of the case would be that a person knowingly went behind a fence.
Right.
So if I provide an email that is knowledge that the fence went up illegally, do you not have the due process diligence to go check before you ticket?
You go with what you got, and the email can't be authenticated. That's what your courtroom is for.
Well, no, that's the thing right there.
Yeah, right
is
there.
That
you could have talked to him
you
in
could've went
24
called
hours
on
and gone and checked Rob to see the
Maybe.
validity of it, and
Maybe.
then come back and.
But in your cases, You've won cases where we've had emails as evidence, and they've said, well, that person's not here to testify that that's their email.
No, but that's the whole point.
Different. That's in court for the validity on the street.
This is like a business owner that basically you see in a business, and you're like, hey, are you trespassing? And the guy's like, no, dude, here's my business card. I own this place. And the guy's like, forged. It's, sorry, I can't accept that. You have to take that to court.
Yeah.
Is that not a big waste of time when you could go check?
Could be.
If you had an ID check, his validity.
In many cases, you're describing a trial or a hearing that we don't do on the street. We do our best with good faith kinds of information.
Oh my gosh.
Oh wow.
If an email is not good enough.
No, it's not.
If I had it notarized, it would be good enough.
We're just going to ask other cops to get their answers. If they say yes, then it's...
Yeah, they've already said no.
Because you know the answer to that.
Well, the whole idea...
What I told you, my answer was, I may.
You may.
Yeah.
I guess what he's trying to get at is, you guys...
We've had the same conversation at Jefferson Park, and you say, listen, I'm committing a crime right now. I demand you do something. And I have the discretion whether or not I do or I do not. And you've asked me to enforce crimes, enforce laws, and I'm like, yeah, sorry. Are we out? Oh, okay.
We can argue.
Sorry, guys.
Here, on the way out, maybe I can explain it this way.
Well, we're tidying up. We got to fix up the room again. But thanks for the conversation and being here tonight, guys. We'll talk to you. We'll be out there.
I guess what he's trying to say is,
the last point.
Where to draw the line of frivolous or not? Was it really worth all the court's time to see if that email was right?
Let's frame it this way. He says save that email for court. I don't use that email for court. I just say I exercise all my rights to remain silent. Is it ethical for me to be convicted under trespassing if there really is no trespassing?
That's the court's job. I told you that.
No, that's the officer's job to know if it's trespassing or not, right? Because I'm not trespassing in the end.
Technically, he would know if it's 100 foot.
Oh, they're fried.
Yeah, they're all wrong.
That's 100% illegal.
Yep.
Yep. Hey, what's up, guys?
Hi.
I had a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Who are you anyway?
Andy Ferraro.
Okay, I thought I recognized you.
No.
And you, my good sir?
I'm Officer Howard.
Howard. Okay,
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah.
Well, we're Will and Dave, just hometown names. I'm sure you guys know. Always asking people questions. So, basically, if you guys saw somebody behind a fence, and they provided an email that said this fence was put up illegally.
So I worked that case, and we don't need to discuss that case. It's
Okay.
already handled.
So, the point is that you guys are considering that trespassing because you're considering that Safeway property, when your very own city manager actually sent the takedown notice, 2384 notice. I found out later.
So I have nothing to say about that case. We've already dealt with that case.
So you do you believe I'm trespassing then?
You're not trespassing right now, no.
No, on that case. So you believe that I'm still trespassing?
Yes, we charge you with second-degree trespassing at that point for being behind the fence.
For being behind the fence.
Yes.
And the elements of trespassing are that someone unlawfully, knowingly went behind the fence.
Correct. You climbed the fence.
Okay. The element of knowingly, I jumped a fence with the email that I got sent because I was the one who triggered.
That's something you can discuss with the courts and all that, okay?
That's a racketeering move where you lawyer up instead of the intellectually honest move, which would be to say that I knew the fence was put up illegally. That's the knowingly, right? So are you guys literally trying to tell me that I didn't knowingly put that fence?
So
See what I mean? You guys are so intellectually dishonest. We thought we could get an honest answer from you guys. But you're literally lawyering up because you can't let your other cops down that they didn't have probable cause.
So here's the deal.
That's really
To
bad.
say about the case, we've already been charged with it. It's already gone to court.
Yeah, you guys are literally thinking that I'm still trespassing, which is amazingly illegal.
You're not trespassing at all. So.
Well, then or now?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, it's a right of way. I'm the one who sent the takedown notice.
That was in the past, so it's nothing to deal with anymore. Okay.
It's fraud that you guys let yourselves continue to do this.
Mr. Montgomery, it has nothing to do with right now. Okay, you're not trespassing. You're not doing anything. You're here at the library for me. So.
Yes, but it's really disappointing that you guys think that you can convict me of trespassing because all you see is a guy behind a fence
and that there doesn't need to be any sort of leeway. Do you think I'm not going to show the jury my actual email from Rob Mosby?
You've already been charged with that crime, and you've already been in court.
I know, yeah, of course. You guys have your lawyered up answers. You're really good at that, But honestly, why don't you actually go into the corner and talk to yourself for a little bit to work these issues out?
I guess what we're warning is if he gets convicted on it, it's theft of federal land, and that's a very serious issue. It's already happened once.
You gotta take it through the courts.
It's not for our issue. We don't care about it's your city. Your city's going to be
It's you guys that have the lack of probable cause. It's
we're trying to save
you guys that are convicting
literally.
People on a sidewalk.
Yeah,
we're warning you guys that's like a 15 crimes right there.
I appreciate the warning at all. Okay?
So probable cause.
Correct. You're exactly right. To arrest somebody, you have to have probable cause. And probable cause to arrest you at that point.
And the probable cause was that basically you hoped that I didn't know. Like I said, the knowingly part. I had a freaking email, guys.
There is we knew it was illegal. We talked to Rob Mosby like 3 times.
You knew it was illegal to be behind the fence.
No, I knew that the fence went up illegally.
2384. Okay. Yeah, it's a right away. And not safe.
That's something you got to bring before the courts.
Oh yeah, no, of course,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. What we're saying is that when we win,
and put that before the judge.
It's like the other cases we've won. We show you a map. You say, save that for court. We've won.
That has nothing to do with myself or Officer Ferraro.
Actually, it does. It's all the officers.
Mr. Montgomery, we're done talking to you about that case. The case is still in progress.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk to you anymore about it. Do you understand?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, there's a different case that I've won where I offered a map, and the same thing happened, and they said, save that for court. And I went to court, and I did win. I obviously wasn't in the park. Why are those officers still working? Why are they not charged with human trafficking or at least kidnapping or at least false imprisonment?
And I have no discussion with you about that.
Of course, that's you guys are lawyering up. Oh, I'm just giving you examples. You have cops on your force right now that are illegally detaining people and illegally writing people tickets.
About any other cases that are being involved.
So, no, absolutely. Good luck in court, guys. You won't even investigate your own cops, and they still think I'm trespassing too. Wow.
That's fucking good, man.
Wow, they can't actually let go that their cop didn't ticket him correctly. Oh, he's behind a fence. It's trespassing. No, that is the most intellectually dishonest move right there that I've ever heard in my entire life. We've discussed this, and we still think that you're trespassing. Because they think they can actually dupe a jury into thinking that there's a little crime in there, somewhere in between the fence and the email, that, sorry, you can't just jump fences without the emails beforehand.
All you're worrying about is trespassing charge. They're about to steal federal land, technically, committed an act of crime.
So the point is that
fake parcel.
Yeah,
they're not taking that.
You know what? You want to know why we're so frustrated? It's because we're not dealing with real people anymore.
Yeah, these are just
these are mathematical anomalies.
No, I can't wait. Literally, give it 4 months and 4 colonies indicted on racketeering charges.
No, when they actually think, oh yeah, I did that case. Yep, you're trespassing. Here's the point: is that David? I figured out where they went wrong.
Where did they go wrong?
Are you ready for this?
Sure.
I'm dead in the moment for all my thoughts.
That's crazy.
To be correct. You want to know what? They don't understand the difference between a probable cause and a conviction, and that you can have probable cause. You know, if you really think that he did it,
to have probable cause and let it fall apart.
Yep.
But what we're saying